Yesterday, we learned about the Silk Roads. We can see the Silk Roads on this map. Silk objects are very fine and very strong, and it was an important invention from the Chinese. Remember, the Silk Roads were not actually made of silk. They were a web of roads that was the longest and most important trade route, and it was given the name Silk Roads because silk was traded along the Silk Roads. Remember, silk comes from the cocoons of silkworms. The cocoons are baked and then plunged into hot water to loosen the threads. In ancient China, the process of making silk was a secret because it was such a valuable product. Today, many people know how to make silk. We have learned about a lot of different Chinese contributions so far. We've talked about silk, about paper, block printing, seed drills, and plows. So far, all of these contributions have been tools or objects that are still used today. Not all contributions have practical uses. Some contributions begin as useful tools, but over time have become important as wonders of the world. In today's Read Aloud, we are going to learn about something that was very useful when it was first created, but today we don't use it for the same purpose, and it is just considered a wonder of the world. Let's go over some vocabulary words before we get started. Transport. Transport means to carry or move from one place to another. For example, Alex used a wheelbarrow to transport dirt from his backyard to the garden in his front yard. Span. Span means to extend across an amount of space or a period of time. For example, the farmer built a bridge to span all the way across the pond. Intervals. Intervals are spaces between two or more objects or moments in time. For example, the chef requested his dinner tables be placed at 10-foot intervals. Defense. Defense is a safeguard or protection against something dangerous. Washing your hands before you eat is a good defense against germs. Think of something that makes a good defense. All right, I am going to read several sentences. If the sentence I read describes something that can be used as a defense, I want you to say that is a defense. If the sentence I read does not describe something that can be used as a defense, say not a defense. Here we go. Jet used some bug spray on his arms and legs before going out to play. Bug spray is a defense. Good job. Nadia washed her hands very well with soap and water before eating dinner. Soap is a defense. Brian put water on his skin when he went outside to play in the afternoon sunshine. Water is not a defense. Sunscreen would be a good defense, but water will not protect you from being sunburned. Julie's mother always made sure that in the car she and her sister wore their seatbelts for safety. Their seatbelts are a defense. Liz kept her mask on when she sneezed so that her germs wouldn't get on anyone else. Her mask is a defense. All right, my friends, let's learn about an important contribution from ancient China. People have been building walls all over the world for many thousands of years. There are walls that hold up the roof of your house, walls that form the exterior of your school, and walls that make up the many buildings you see throughout the day. Some walls, however, are very special and are known all over the world. Let's take a look at a few famous walls. This one, called Hadrian's Wall, was built in Great Britain and extended from one side of the country to the other. Originally built to keep enemies out, Today this wall serves as a friendly guidepost to many hikers touring the English countryside. This wall is called the Western Wall by Jewish people today, and it is used as a sacred prayer wall. This wall is the only remaining support wall that was part of an ancient temple in Jerusalem. Remember, if something is sacred, that means that it is holy or something important to one's religion and religious practices. This wall is sacred to Jewish people. And this wall, the Great Wall of China, is probably the world's most famous wall of all. It snakes along over 4,000 miles of land in northern China. The word snakes in this sentence means to follow a twisting path with many turns. Snakes can also mean animals that have a long, thin body with no arms or legs. Like Hadrian's Wall, the Great Wall of China was built to keep enemies out. The story of this Great Wall begins in the cold, dry lands north of the Yangtze and Yellow Rivers. You see, China is one of the largest countries in the world, and its borders span a great amount of land. The land across this vast territory can be very, very different. Some areas, like the river valleys of the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, are very fertile. In other areas, like the land far north of these rivers, it is very cold and dry, and almost no crops grow there. The people who lived in the cold, dry north had to make their living in other ways. Long ago, in these cold northern lands, beyond the boundaries of China, a group of nomads lived by raising animals. Remember, nomads are people who move from place to place rather than settle in one area. They rode on horses, herding sheep and goats from place to place in search of grass for grazing. Life was very hard for these nomadic people who lived to the north of China. Perhaps that is why they became such fierce warriors. These northern nomads regularly crossed over the boundary into China on horseback, stealing food, gold, and animals. How do you think the people who lived in China felt about these northern nomads taking their food, gold, and animals? The Chinese thought of many ways to keep the attackers out. How do you think they tried to keep the northern attackers from stealing their goods? All along the northern border of China, the Chinese built walls of earth, stone, and wood. The materials they used depended upon what was readily available in the areas where they lived. For hundreds of years, the Chinese built many separate walls to keep out northern invaders. But it was not until the rule of China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, that the decision was made to connect the many walls together into one long wall, the Great Wall, for added protection. That was over 2,000 years ago. Work continued on the Great Wall for another 1,500 years. Soldiers, prisoners, and peasants struggled to obey the orders of each new and powerful emperor of China who wanted to finish the wall. It was not an easy task. The wall stretched out across the land like a giant dragon, often built on the highest ground, like mountain ridges, to make it even more difficult for invaders to cross. Donkeys and goats were sometimes used to transport building materials, but people did most of the work. With baskets slung over their backs or balanced on poles across their shoulders, they worked from sunrise to sunset, building and repairing the Great Wall. The work was very dangerous, and many workers died in the process. Spanning 4,000 miles, an enormous, extremely large distance, across northern China, the Great Wall was built to act like a fort. At intervals along the way, watchtowers were erected or built on the wall. At one time, there were nearly 25,000 watchtowers. Supplies were stored inside of these tall spires: bows, arrows, cooking tools, and medicines. Soldiers posted atop the lookout towers kept watch for invading warriors. If they sensed danger, they used flags and drums to send signals from tower to tower. At night, fires along the wall alerted Chinese soldiers of possible enemy attack. Beneath the towers, soldiers who were camped in tents also watched for signals, ready to come to the defense of the wall, and of all of the people behind it at a moment's notice. New roads were continually built to reach the wall. Every day, Chinese people from near and far moved closer to the construction in order to provide soldiers and workers with their everyday needs. Some grew crops and cooked food for the soldiers and workers, whereas others made their tools and clothing. Irrigation canals were dug to supply everyone with water. For many years, people slaved to fulfill the Qin Emperor's dream of one continuous wall. The building of the wall was a project that lasted over many lifetimes, passing from one generation to the next. It was an enormously long and difficult project. Do you think the Chinese people agreed with the emperor's dream, or did they build the wall simply because they were ordered to do so? Do you think with all of that hard work, the Great Wall protected the Chinese as planned? Yes, it did. For much of Chinese history, at least. There were times, however, when some determined warriors broke through the wall. On 2 occasions, lasting for hundreds of years each, nomads from Central Asia forced the Chinese people to live under their harsh, or difficult and cruel, rule. Today, the Great Wall is no longer used as a means of protection. Rather, it has become a tourist attraction. People come from all over the world to see it, walk on it, and learn more about it. It is truly a wonder of the world. Parts of the Great Wall have crumbled, but there are still many parts of it where you can walk along the same bricks and stones as the soldiers of long ago. Some people even pay money to sleep in the watchtowers. One day, that could be you. Alright, my friends, today I want to talk about another proverb. Remember, a proverb is a short traditional saying that has been passed along orally from generation to generation. These sayings usually express general truths based on experiences and observations of everyday life. Although some proverbs have literal meanings, meaning that they mean exactly what they say, many proverbs have a richer meaning beyond the literal level. The proverb I want to talk about today is easier said than done. When Qin Shi Huang became emperor, he wanted all of the small protective walls around China to be connected into one long wall. His project took 1,500 years to complete. We might say that deciding to build the Great Wall of China was easier said than done. It was easier for Emperor Qin to say that the wall should be connected, but it was much more difficult to actually do it. See if you can think of a personal experience in which the phrase easier said than done applies. Alright, my friends, I'm going to read a list of activities that may or may not be easier said than done. If you think it is easier said than done, I want you to touch your head. If it's not easier said than done, I want you to touch your toes. Our first one is run 5 miles. Is that easier said than done? What about reading a 300-page book? Picking up a piece of trash from the floor? Or stopping your friends from arguing? What about turning off a light switch? And finally, what about training a dog to make your bed for you?
All right, my friends, we just learned a lot about an important contribution to ancient Chinese civilization, the Great Wall of China. I'm going to do a quick activity with you. Wherever you're at, I want you to stand up. Oops. I'm going to read a couple of statements about the Great Wall of China. If the statement that I say is true or is a fact, I want you to make yourself a wall. I want you to stretch out your arms and make yourself a big, strong wall. If the answer to my question is no, I'm going to have you bring your arms in and make yourself small. All right, let's start with that first one. People have been building walls for many thousands of years. You got it. That one is true. The Great Wall of China snakes along over 4,000 miles of land in northern China. That one is also true. All of the land in China is fertile and perfect for growing crops. Oh, you guys are good. That one is not true. Not all of the land in China is perfect for crops. All right, before the wall was built, nomads from cold northern lands regularly crossed over the boundary into China on horseback, stealing food, gold, and animals. That one is true. The people had to use whatever materials they had nearby to build the first walls, and these walls were not very durable. That is true. Animals did most of the work to build the Great Wall. Animals did most of the work. That one is false. Watchtowers were built to defend or protect the wall. That one is true. There were times when determined invaders broke through the wall. You guys are good. That one is also true. All right, last one. Today, the wall is still used to keep invaders out of China. That one is false. That's not what the wall is used for today. All right, my friends. We have been talking a lot about the Great Wall. Can you tell me why it was first built? Why was the Great Wall of China first built? You've got it. It was used to defend China from invaders that were breaking through to steal food, animals, and gold. All right. Did the Great Wall of China always provide a defense for its people in the northern part of China? Did the Great Wall of China always provide a defense for the people in the northern part of China? No, it didn't. There were times when nomadic invaders were able to break through the wall. Even with the wall there, it didn't always work to protect those people. Who was it that helped build the Great Wall? Who did the building on the wall? Soldiers, peasants, and prisoners did most of the work. Animals were sometimes used to transport the materials, but the people were the ones that built the wall. Do you think that was easy work for those people? No, that was a lot of hard work for them. Why did they build watchtowers at intervals on the Great Wall? What were the watchtowers for? The watchtowers, like the name implies, were used to keep watch. Soldiers would stand there and watch for invaders. They were also used as supply houses. They would store supplies there. Is the Great Wall of China still important today? Yes, the Great Wall of China is still important. It no longer is used to protect the Chinese people from invaders, but it is an important tourist destination. All right, my last question. I want you to turn to the person sitting next to you. Whether it's your grandma, your neighbor, your brother, whoever is there sitting with you, and I want you to think of a question you could ask them about today's read aloud. Think of a question you could ask them that starts with the word what. So remember, what is one of our question words? I want you to use the word what to think of a question you could ask whoever's there helping you about our read aloud today. So you might say what materials were used to make the Great Wall, to build the Great Wall. Or you might say, what was the Great Wall built for? Think of a question and ask the person they're helping you. And if they can't answer the question, if they don't know the answer, I want you to explain it to them. I want you to teach them a little bit today if they can't answer the question. All right, my friends, we have got one more thing that we're going to do. I'm going to have you go ahead and open up the PDF that's attached to this assignment, and I'm going to jump over my computer and show you what to do there.
Go ahead and pull up the PDF attached to this assignment labeled K2.12.1. It should look like this when you've opened it in Kami. On this paper, we are going to retell the story of how the Great Wall of China was built using the somebody wanted but so then format. This format helps us break stories down to its important parts. I'm going to have you follow along and listen to me and watch me fill out this chart, and then I want you to fill out your own. Yours might look a little bit different than mine, but it should have the same ideas. Let's start with our somebody. Who ordered the Great Wall of China to be built? You've got it. It was China's first emperor. China's first emperor was Qin Shi. Oh, I gotta capitalize that. It's his name. Qin Shi Huang. Qin Shi Huang was emperor's first China, who ordered the Great Wall of China to be built. What did he want? Why did he want to build the Great Wall? You've got it. Qin Shi Huangdi wanted to protect China from the northern invaders. Remember, these people, these northern nomads, invaded China and stole their animals, gold, and food. Qin Shi Huang wanted to protect China from them. But what? Why couldn't he protect China from the invaders? What did the protection up in northern China look like before the Great Wall? Before the Great Wall was built, Qin Shi Huang had only small, separate walls that only protected parts of the country, but not the whole country of China. So, what did he do? Because his walls that were already there were not enough to protect China from the northern invaders, what did Emperor Qin Shi Huang do? Emperor Qin ordered soldiers, prisoners, and peasants to work on building one long connected wall. He wanted a large connected wall that he believed would help protect the people of China better. When it was done, did it protect the people better than the small walls? Yes, it did. Then, what happened? What was the product of him ordering the soldiers, peasants, and prisoners to work on the wall? They created the Great Wall of China. They created the Great Wall of China. Alright, my friends, I want you to fill this out on your own now. Yours will look a lot like mine. You might want to change a couple of the details, but it will look a lot like mine. You'll have a lot of the same details. When you have filled this out, I want you to turn to your neighbor or your cousin or your brother, whoever is helping you today, and explain how the Great Wall of China was built. Use this to help explain how the Great Wall of China was built. When you are done, go ahead and turn it in up in the top right-hand corner. And then we're going to work on one more thing today. We're going to work on our writing today. When you are finished and this is turned in, go ahead and open the PDF that is labeled K2 12 Writing. And I'll show you what we're going to do on that one. All right, my friends, if you open up the second PDF attached to this assignment that says K2.12 Writing, there is a paper where we are going to write our final draft of our informational books about writing in ancient China. It will say publish at the top. Publishing is the last step in the writing process. Publishing is when we finish our book and share it with others, produce it, publish it. In our last assignment, we did a lot of editing, which made our papers look really messy. You can see on mine, I've got lots of added words, and it's very colorful. If I were to hand this to someone, it would be very difficult for them to read it. So when I publish, I'm going to take all of these good ideas that I had while I was revising and editing, and I'm going to write it neatly into my finished work. So I'm going to rewrite all of my sentences, but I'm going to type them with all of the additions or changes that I made. So instead of having lots of words floating up in the air, it will all be written on one sentence. All of this will just be added into my sentences that I will type or write here. This one you can type in a text box, or you can print it and write it by hand. There are 2 pages in case you need the extra room. If your 3 facts and your title only take 1 page, that's totally fine, but there is an extra page if you need it. There is a blank page attached to the bottom. On that blank page, you're going to write your title. To write your title, you can type it, whatever you decided to title your informational book. You can type it, or you can use the drawing tool to draw it. You can also use the shapes or your drawing tool to add a design. Many book covers have a picture or a design on the cover. You can add any design that you would like for your cover for your book. When this is all done, if you've printed it, go ahead and take a picture and attach it to this assignment. Or if you've typed it, you can turn it in up at the top right. And that is our last step for our writing process.